Okay, so welcome to the nth community meeting, the one for September. We have a sort of long and short agenda, I guess. Starting with a brief update on where we are on the development. You can see sort of the status of activity, basically, that Megan put up in the notes there with how many issues have been opened and closed and pull requests merged in and so on. So stuff is happening continuously, of course. There's always more bugs to kill. Killing 2 bugs leaves 1 behind, kind of thing. Slow process, we all know that drill. Long option implementation. So since that's one of the things that NSF funded us to do, that's something I am committed to doing. And since Julia specifically had gone ahead doing a lot of work on that thing, we'll kind of follow along and use some of the same keywords that Joachim has picked out, unless they're sort of lexically wrong or something. we'll have to do some aliases maybe, but that will sort of happen regardless of what else we're going to be doing. And I'll be doing that in a branch, I think. We had a couple of summer workshops. We had 2. We had the traditional UNAFCO GMT for geodesists that we did this year again. Like last year online. We had, can't remember the number now, but close to 100 and something participating. This time, some students could get credit through the University of Montana, I think. And I think it was only 1 student actually did that, because we had to fill out some form. We had help from new folks. We had Federico helping out. Those are great. Thanks, Federico. I hope you enjoyed the experience. And we had some students and part of the team members. So it seemed fine. We're waiting for UNAFCO's student evaluation. They have some feedback process. They'll tell us, if something was particularly good or bad. That will happen any day now, I think. So we'll probably report that next meeting. And then we had a Women's Science Network workshop at PyGMT, Megan, that you can probably speak about.
Yeah, so we hosted a workshop on developing free open source software in collaboration with the Earth Science Women's Network. This is something that was proposed for GMT in the NSF proposal, and we decided, and we proposed in our in-review NASA proposal to expand this to PyGMT. The workshop in August was for PyGMT because a lot of the infrastructure to support new developers is already in place. So it was a good trial run for this developer workshop. We had over 50 applicants. We had 14 of the people we invited to participate register for the event. And then about 6 people were actively engaged. And those 6 people who were actively engaged ended up submitting multiple pull requests, gave positive verbal feedback at the end, and our plan is to ask for some more formal feedback similar to what Melissa is leading through UNAVCO. I think moving forward, the 2 things that will be important to figure out are, 1, how to retain registrants to actually come to the workshop. I think this is mostly a limitation involved in this online workspace we're all experimenting with in the past 18 months, that there's no real investment when you register for something that's free online. When it's something they're registering for in person, I think we'll have a lot more people stick around from the point at which they register to when they are engaging in the workshop. And then the second thing I think we can improve on is how to retain those developers afterwards. So some are still contributing to their pull requests and seem interested in remaining involved in PyGMT. There's also 2 pull requests that are open, and we still have to figure out how to either move forward with or without their contributions. So that's something that we'll learn from for future workshops, which are bound to happen through NSF support and hopefully with the NASA proposal too.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you try to get new folks in, you kind of have to follow up. It's like special coaching needing in the beginning to make them feel comfortable and part of the team and all that stuff. So that's some psychology 101 thing a little bit there that we need to get better. I just mentioned that thing about the online, the low buy-in, because you're just putting your name on the list and then you forget about it. I guess the flip side of that is that through the UNAVCO one, we've had, several hundred students across the world have had a chance to interact with us and learn a little bit about GMT and stuff. While in the past, there was like 20, 25 who could actually make it to San Diego. So it's sort of a mixed thing, right? We have a wider impact with online. And although we all hope to go back to some sort of physical, boondoggle trip to San Diego and maybe do a hybrid thing, right? Where we do a better job on the online version while doing it physically there on site. So we'll see, who knows, next year we might still be doing this stuff by Zoom. So not holding my breath on that. Great, so thanks for that. We have a few days until the deadline for the EGU short course proposals. I think it's what did we figure out, the 6th or the 4th, one of those 2 dates.
6th, I think.
6th, yeah. So, it's too early to know what the hell that kind of meeting will be like, if it's going to be a hybrid thing or all online or back to normal thing. And I guess EGU has to decide this way before they know. So they will probably be cautious and looking at the Delta or Lambda spikes, whatever we have at that time, and shut it down or do online, I'm guessing. But if we have a chance to go there, we have funds to send Megan there for sure. We might even have funds to send Veiji if he's interested in going. There'll be a PyGMT workshop. I will, again, I think I will be in Europe at this time at Oxford. And if life is normal, I would be at the meeting, but I wouldn't be very useful in a PyGMT context. So I guess we'll have to continue that discussion with Weiji and try to get it on the deadline. Megan, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, in the so Weiji opened this conversation first in the forum. There's a EGU short course post, and in that post there's a link to a HackMD, which is a collaborative document editing service, and that's where the revisions for the short course are happening. So if anyone's interested in getting involved or even just providing some comments on what we'll be doing for the short course, you can provide feedback there. I think we shouldn't necessarily make any decisions in this meeting without Weiji here. So conversing over a HackMD seems like a good way forward.
Yeah, I'll let him know that we can't fund him if he would be interested in attending in person.
Good news.
Yeah. Great. All right. We'll keep to the agenda here. So documentation improvements. There's 2 subpoints: updating animations and then page for simple examples. So the updating animations, it was just a realization a month or more ago that we have a mix of animation examples. We have some really quick, dirty, short, small, physical size imagery, animated GIFs that don't look that great because they're small resolution. They don't really highlight the quality of movies that you can make with GMT. So we're going to rebuff those and make them full HD and then just host them on YouTube like the other ones. So Federico has been very helpful in that. He's turned several of them into a very slick, better animation that better highlight what you can do with animations instead of just, feeling constricted by the size of the file that has to go into a repo, right? Because that's sort of self-defeating, right? Just make it so bad and short that no one cares. So we're going to try to make them better. And that also eliminates the need to store any large file in the repo. It will just be a YouTube link that is more accessible. So that's happening. And then we have this issue of the page for simple examples, sort of along the matplotlib way of showing how do you plot a line, how do you plot circles, that kind of thing. You want to expand on that, Megan? I think that's sort of what the purpose of that issue was.
Yeah, so this is a pull request that Dong submitted, and it's based on a lot of conversations that have happened in various forms, where I think most people who've commented are in agreement that some page with examples of how to do simple tasks like Matplotlib's gallery are useful. This PR suggests one solution in which we just add another page to our existing Sphinx gallery. And the main, I think, the 2 main things that are still being discussed in that PR are where to host the images, because we don't want to blow our repository even more, and then how to document how people contribute, because it will help them if we make the decisions for what goes in there ahead of time. So that's kind of the background. I will say that my opinion on this is that it would be, I think it would be more sustainable moving forward if we have these in a separate repository that has a simpler build structure than GMT's documentation build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like that's something we can experiment with. We could always change our mind on that, right? If it, for some whatever reason we want to bring it into the fold, but maybe that is a better way to do it. Most people don't care about building documentation, right? So they want to use it. And it's a little bit tied into point 6, I guess, also with storing documentation figures and things. Yeah, that's good. We got some questions and requests about, hey, can't GMT add some more cool data sets like, the world's plate boundaries, or, volcanoes, or some other thing, so that we can just use the remote file method in GMT like we do for grids. And the idea of having a community maintained GMT related repository for such data sets came up. And I saw a couple of red flags there. Is that, by community maintained, that means us to some extent, right? If we're going to make a repository under the GMT genetic mapping tools family of GitHub repositories, then we will be in charge of this. And then, where do you draw the limit here? I think it's complicated. There's a lot of cool data set, and I would love to have Peter Bird's data file in there. I know Christian Heine went through the trouble of make sure they're all aligned correctly so that the sawtooth on the trenches point in the right direction, for instance. That stuff like that. That's very valuable. And I would like that file, but I don't think that's a good argument for putting it into some sort of GMT database that we're going to maintain forever. So I think I would say no to that thought that we're going to be involved with maintaining files like that. And we'll just stick to the global planetary scale grids that we have started doing. I think that's more wider use. Everybody needs topography, etc. Only geologists might care about plate boundary. So that's sort of the generic versus the very specific. Anyone have any counterpoints to that or agreements? Joachim is muted. He's talking though. Lips are moving. Can't read.
No, I had I had muted because before I had the problem that I was muted and on the ears as well. I could not hear you. Go with I found the earphones, but they blocked the sound for a while. No, I agree. I agree with that. I don't think we should start providing that. It's not our.
Yeah.
It's not our business, because after that we are always receiving that. Or either request, or like the Italian guy recently that he did not know that on the 10 by 10 square kilometers tile, he would better not compute the distance to shore because he would get a very large error. So the thing that we are committed to is to have a better coastlines. Other than that, I don't think we should go on that route.
Yeah, I mean, if you are been around for a long time, you remember Ben Horner-Johnson had a website with all kinds of hodgepodge of files.
I think it still exists. I think that link is still alive.
Yeah. And that, of course, that's fine. People can do this and advertise, hey, there's a lot of cool data sets on this link. But I'm hesitant to take on that kind of curator role for the world's good ideas of databases. So I think we'll have to decline Christian's contribution in a gentle way.
Well, it would be good to have a link, just something like on the genre of what Ben had, a link to places, useful places. That would be good.
Yeah, we could say,
we could host something like that, but not the data files by ourselves. Yeah. We have many problems with the downloads. There is always something in the internet, some goes behind our computers, giving troubles now and then for download. So more we have, more troubles we'll have.
Yeah. All right.
But that's not the main reason. The main reason I think is really is not our no, it's not the job, but our role to provide the data, because that is huge. Why not? Then you go to satellites.
Yeah.
Why not satellites? I would like to see my house from today.
Yes. No, that's fair enough. We'll suggest that he can think of other ways to share that data file. We can advertise it. Yeah.
A question. So this is, it seems like we're all in agreement that we shouldn't host anything for a user-focused database. So we want to expand the examples so that all the examples in the module man pages are reproducible, right? And
yes.
It's likely that the data that are already in the cache are not sufficient for showing how to use the many tasks that you can complete with GMT. So how are we going to ourselves upload it to the cache, or are we going to create a different solution for those data?
Yeah, the way I think of cache is that it's just cache, right? It's not guaranteed to last until tomorrow. So anything we put in cache to show something in GMT doesn't mean that we endorse this file forever, right? So I think we are pretty flexible having called it cache to just be a hodgepodge of things as example data to highlight GMT, and we will continue to add files to that thing for whatever reasons to make the scripts easier to run and for other people to just copy paste scripts and run them on their computer. But there's no guarantee that we will maintain any of that stuff. So I think that's an okay arrangement. That means we retain ultimate flexibility of, now we're going to delete that script, and oh yeah, we'll delete that file. We don't care about that file anymore. And if someone complains about, I need that file, we'll say you shouldn't look around in /temp for data. That's not the place. You gotta make sure you have copies of things like that. This is our ephemeral. And we could highlight that a little bit more maybe in the man page too, so that's clear to people. Just because they find some cool data in that directory, that doesn't mean that we are supporting that forever. The big one is 6, I guess, the data version control for GMT image-based tests. So the background of this is that the repo is growing every time we stick a large PostScript file into it as an original piece of art that we can compare the output of scripts with to make sure GMT functions, right? And we have something over 1,000 test scripts right now total. And, the idea was to make many more, and that if that means we have to add large PostScript files to the repo will be 5 gigabytes pretty soon, and it's just painful. So this is a solution to that, and I believe it has been implemented in PyGMT to avoid that same issue to having the repo grow too fast. So Megan, do you want to give a brief overview of what it is and where it might take us?
Sure, I can do that. I opened an issue yesterday giving an overview of what PyGMT is used as a solution. So Weiji led an effort to use data version control to track the test baseline images. And so data version control is quite similar to Git, except it's designed to track large data or model files. And so rather than, say, for example, adding the PostScript file, which is problematic because Git can't efficiently track the history. So each time you update it, it stores both the previous file and the new file. So you're not just storing the diff as you would with a plain text file, you're storing an entirely new 11 megabyte file, which has led our repository to increase in size by 50% over the last 1.5 years. So data version control doesn't track the PostScript file itself at all. It instead adds a metadata file that just has the MD5 hash and some other information about the PostScript file. And then the file itself is stored in a separate, usually cloud storage environment. And the data version control is just the tools that you use to download or push the file that's associated with that specific hash. And it's beneficial because it will prevent the Git repository itself from increasing in size. So for example, people who aren't interested in running the test never have to do a DVC, which is the data version control pull. So they will have a shallow clone that's, I would guess, about 250 megabytes less. And then for the developers who do run the tests, you can clean up the old PostScript files that are cached, so that you only have the files that are required for testing the current set of branches that you have. So it'll clean out the amount so that all of us aren't having 2 gigabytes of GMT data on our computers in another 6 months or something like that. So those are the benefits. It is an involved process to get it set up initially, but it in the long term would just require people being familiar with a few different DVC commands and having authentication to interact with whatever remote storage we end up using. And this is what I consider the biggest risk of migrating to DVC, is that we are adding another provider for cloud storage. So GMT uses DAGS Hub, which is like GitHub, but for these data storage, and it works quite smoothly for them. And right now they don't charge anything for less than 10 gigabytes of storage, but business models can always change, right? So there is some risk associated with that. Presumably we could change it if we stop thinking that they're the right business. There's also Google Cloud and S3, but it will be another, or we could even host it on the GMT server, but that runs into permissions problems, since I don't know if we can expand the group who can use that. So that's a brief overview of data version control. I think it would be an improvement overall.
Yeah. The one problem is that we can't easily trim down the Git repo that it is right now and get rid of old history. I think that requires a major reformat and ruining people's histories or something like that. That's my understanding.
Yeah, the proposal that I put forth is only for kind of reducing the problem moving forward. It doesn't it doesn't do a rebase for rewriting the history. There are options, but none of those are ideal either.
Yeah, it basically means that people who have checked out GMT Git will have to delete that and check it out again, right after we did a rebase or something like that. I think that's how it worked.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's something like that.
But if I remember, there were a couple of changes in the issue. There were 1 or 2 solutions. Don't know with one. I think we found it a bit risky, because I found, well, I'm hesitating, more leaning to the yes to that. But if we can clean our current Git repo, if we don't really, I'm more hesitant to consider that useful. Thing is, we are full of old PostScript files. Diffs, they are text, they are diff, but they are still the most part of the repo. If we can trim it out and not repeat and not come to this talk in 1 or 2 years, then I think yes, well, I would risk to go to one more dependency, one more thing to learn and so on. But if we do that, and at the same time we start at the level that we are now,
it will still be big.
Don't think it will still be very big. So we will still be very big plus the other one.
Right. I agree with that. I think
you remember when Leo made the, and we 3 of us in San Diego. I was not very convinced that we should have ported the entire history of old GMT. We should have started at that point. That was my opinion back then, and for this exact reason.
Sure.
And we have to stay. I agree. We have to stop that.
Yeah.
Because the PostScript is not it's not the text. It's really the PostScript.
Yeah. No, definitely. The text is not the problem.
So the thing is, do we take the risk? Well, the risk is not that such a big risk. It's a work and know how to do it and to know how to do that. That's but the risk is not so big. Okay, we all have copies of it. We are not going to lose anything. And even if we lose a part of the history, we can have a backup of the history. And so if we could, and well, I'm not offering to do that, but if we could just trim the the PostScript files, the things from the current repo, and we learn in the process. So if we have to do it again in 2 or 3 years, we'll do it again. That for me would be ideal.
Yeah, let's Megan, you and I can, and maybe with a little bit help from Leo and Dong, we can look into what are the steps that it will take to create a new repo from the old one minus certain files. You know, it will break some histories and stuff, but it will be an interesting.
It will break history, but who cares about history except 2 or 3 of us?
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, so if we end up with a new repo called GMT 7 or something like that, you know.
Yeah, that's the worst case.
That's better than having the huge one, bloated one that we can never do anything about.
And that's still the worst case, because the attempt will be to maintain this one and trim out the part of the history, not the files just of the history.
Yeah, so we should do both probably then. We should first trim the GMT repo somehow, learn about that, and then we'll do the data version control going forward with a skinnier repo so we don't load it up again.
Yeah.
I think we should look into both of those things. So I agree with that. It makes a little sense to have this fat person and saying from now on, you're just going to eat this diet that will maintain your weight. It's like, okay, but I'm overweight. Yeah, that's okay. We've all been there.
I agree generally that both would be good. I think forking the repository and developing GMT7 with like long options or something is probably better than breaking the current GMT repository for the 100 or so forks that we have. I would prefer to implement the DVC solution before trimming the repository, because I think that the prospect of really increasing the size rapidly is holding us back in adding tests and adding new figures for documentation. Whereas the current 1 gigabyte is not, it's going to be great to fix that long term, but I don't think that is holding any work back. So I would prioritize a solution for the future rather than a solution for the past. Okay,
wait, that's fine. I think we'll do both, but that order is okay with me too. That doesn't matter. So we'll do the diet, start the diet right away, and then we do the liposuction and cutting off fat later. Patient gotten the right track. That seems like a reasonable way to do it. Should we move to 7? GMT user survey proposal. I guess we don't have a proposal per se, but we talk about, should we ask our users a whole bunch of questions that they might answer? And what will those questions be? And will we want the answers? You know, like all kinds of surveys. It's in how you design the survey and what you want to hear back. So I guess the part of this was to help us decide where we should put effort, right? Should we spend a whole lot of effort on some supplement that no one cares about? Or should we just basically freeze it out? You know, where are people spending most of the time? So are there modules that no one cares about and that takes a lot of effort to maintain, versus should we improve the ones that are used a lot, that kind of thing? Does anyone have thoughts on what would you ask GMT users?
Go ahead, Walter.
Thanks, Megan. I guess the first question is, do we really have effort that is directable? In other words, if we're already so busy just doing the stuff we know needs to be done, then we don't really want to ask the users for a wish list. On the other hand, if we have a lot of time on our hands and we want to be user directed, then yeah, maybe we need to do a survey. I didn't realize that that we were able to be so user directed, although of course it's an ideal.
Yeah, we don't have time on our hands for sure. I guess we have always used the Steve Jobs model. We just tell people what they need. Here are these modules that you should use. These are good. Just trust us. And that's worked pretty good. So now we're sort of doing, you know, forums and feedback groups, you know, should we add this option to this module? We might get all kinds of things that we will find repulsive, you know. You want to do these things, like, no, that's stupid. then that's not a very great way to respond to user comments. So that's why we have to sort of be careful how we ask these things and frame it maybe carefully so that we give options between things we think we need to do one way or the other, but not necessarily the third way. I agree with that, Walter. We got to be a little bit careful opening Pandora's box. Users aren't always the best to judge what is reasonable to do and what is important to do and all that stuff. Some are.
I think it might make more sense if, if we did have some effort that we wanted to put in, say, one of 2, 3, 4, 5 possible directions, then let the users choose which one they would like to see done first. But I think just kind of
open-ended thing is, yeah.
Open-ended, I think, is probably not going to get us much useful information, and it runs the risk that it annoys people because they take the time to do the survey. They think they're going to get their #1 priority addressed, and then we don't address it because we have other priorities. So then they're mad at us because they think, why did we ask if we didn't care?
Yeah, that's the flip side of that whole enterprise. Yeah, maybe Megan, I should come up with some potential themes or questions that we might want answered and see if we have a list.
Yeah. I think Walter raised some really good points, and maybe for timing of this, we should visit it if there's a proposal call that we see that allows for a few different directions. So maybe now, when we are in the midst of one project and have another under review, isn't the appropriate time for this. But if it's going to, I mean, there's at least a long list that we can probably think of. So having some feedback about those ideas could be helpful for writing a competitive proposal.
Yeah, and we should mention that this is day 226, waiting for the NASA proposal decision. This exceeds the standard length, but who is counting? So I guess, any day now, you'll find that they have made a decision, basically. Since email from NASA regarding these things goes directly to the spam folder, we kind of have to check the Inspire sites ever so often to find out. So, and of course, there's funding in that proposal, if it happens, that deals with some issues like documentation and data sets and things. So I think even the Coastline GSHHG3 has some money in there for Roger Davis to do some of the heavy work, if that happens, right? So some things are basically on pause until we hear if there's funding or not for certain activities, right? And some of the things we proposed will happen, will have to happen regardless, right? But it just makes a difference if there's funding to go along with it versus we're just going to do it for the fun of it. So
we have a list of things that we want to do.
We have a list of things to do.
We don't need to ask anyone.
Yeah.
And I always, one of them that kept to my mind is the code refactoring.
Yes.
It was dropped. Was it dropped? Well, we had different understanding. We had different understandings of what is the.
I mean,
My understanding is
refactoring.
That's my job.
Let's make a job.
If I'm wrong, you should let me know.
No, it's not your job to start with. No.
No.
When it starts, it may become, but not to start with. It's not. I was not thinking on you to be on job.
It's my job to start that, and it will happen. It will happen. There's a kind of as a family of problems that we also have to solve, and they are sort of caused by the externals, right? For suddenly the externals are passing memory things in, and we don't have 20 years or 30 years of experience debugging those things. So there's new kinds of issues that we have to keep on top of that are, important, and it will strengthen the API, but they're a little bit different in debugging than the standard GMT command line problems. So like the GRD blend case and stuff. So we need maybe more people to learn how to debug things from these environments so they can at least point out where things crash.
There are others, as we have talked several other times. For example, every time I have to debug the I/O
Yeah.
Each time I have really less motivation to, because it takes me half a day to reach a point where the things happen. And that for me is code refactory. Start with GMT IO code.
Yeah.
And other things. At the end, break that part in things. Otherwise, people, well, I'm experienced with debugging GMT, and it doesn't look like that when I start. I always forget what I've learned on the previous time. So having that much more simplified would be accessible to other people. The way it is now, I honestly doubt that people, they really have to be motivated to do something, to dig deeply inside that. And that's well, even lower than the externals.
Sure. Yeah, I know
the externals is the thing. The externals are free. 2 of them are equal, but well, some code paths are tested, others are not. So PyGMT has a different, he accesses in a different way. So it's still another path to test the externals.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of, well, it's one of the issues with the code. It's a separate one, but the one that I see complicated for people to interact and understand is really the IO.
Okay. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I know about that IO. I have the same issue you have to step into to get to the point where you finally get to see where the problems lie. It is very abstract and it's hard to remember from time to time. So I will think about, I mean, this means quite a bit of rewrite, right? That's the thing with this stuff, to consider a simpler mechanism for the.
It would help if we just break what exists. What exists is always a switch case that falls into another if and another switch case for all the cases in the same function. It would help a lot if the same code would be broken, data sets are dealt in this function or this file, grids are in here, really separate them. So you don't have to step on the switch and switch and go and come back because he just went to the other function, do a check, and then you come back to the same point. That's what makes it extremely time consuming and difficult to follow. I would say that not rewriting, but breaking. Well, it's a rewrite, of course, but it does not even need to invent a new model of how things work. That comes out later.
Yeah.
But if you just break it, no more switch if switch everything inside of the main for loop or a while or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will have to come up with a game plan for how that might work.
Just for anyone who's not having the chat open, there's been a couple of good comments about that the forum provides some useful input. There's also a possibility to ask questions in the forum, like Weiji did this for the EGU short course. So for example, one question that doesn't motivate an entire formal user survey that I'm interested in is how many GMT users know C, right? Because that would be a good statistic to have for getting people more involved in development. And that's something we could just post in the lounge and see if we get anyone who bites on it.
Yeah. Good. Good comments there in the chat. I find it hard to watch the chat and talk at the same time. This is a problem. Limited attention, number of threads, I guess. Single thread is it's not good. No, there's no. I mean, there are some long-standing fundamental issues, right? So we know the IO is slow because it's trying to do everything and handle all these different kind of decisions, and that they can change. So if you give a ASCII file and a binary file and an etcd file on a command line, it can actually read them all as 3 different files into the same thing because it's abstracted away. But the design of these things are never thoughtful in the beginning. It's sort of ad hoc. So you end up with this thing that maybe has too many checks now. and maybe catering to too many formats at that time. So I know about the slowness of that. I made a few changes recently to eliminate the loop over record by record reading for some modules and just calling read the whole file kind of thing for some module. It just makes it simpler to maintain, and it's a little more stable IO there actually to get through the whole file instead of reading line by line. But there will probably still be some modules we want to keep line by line, like block mean and stuff like that, so you don't have to read the terabyte of records first, for instance. So not those all good points, Joachim, can argue. Okay, so we're at the end of the official agenda, I guess. Anyone want to bring up something that's not on the agenda? We're pretty fast this time. So we're not doing anything at AGU this year. It's in New Orleans, and it's some sort of hybrid mixture thing, I assume. I'm not going, so I don't know. We decided not to do anything there.
Well, we are giving a talk.
We are giving a talk, yeah.
But nothing interactive.
Not a workshop or anything like that. I was gonna say. Yeah, I'm sort of hoping for the spring, summer next year. That's maybe, hope springs eternal, that life returns to something that would allow meetings. We could have some sort of GMT summit of some sort somewhere. But I guess your guess is as good as mine there. We aren't going to have them in Florida, but there are other sites. Yes, so just one thing I forgot to say about updating animations. I also want to work on some more, kind of along the page of simple examples, but it will be for animations. How do you animate things? Because apart from a few people, most people have a hard time using movie and events without following too many examples. So I want to make that very simple. It is an abstract thing, right? To see how a movie is made without the for loop. You just describe this one frame and then it's magically repeated. And I think we need better documentation on that. I need better documentation so I can remember what I did. So I'm going to be doing that, and with the decisions to make these animations, always make the animations movies and put them in YouTube, then we eliminate the issue of size and bloat right away. So I will be doing some of those things. And that's really all I got. So if you have anything else, then you are welcome to bring it up. Going once, twice. All right. Then thank you for participating. Oh, did you have one, Joachim, or did you have one, or you just said
no? I'm done. Yeah.
Very good. All right, guys. Take care. This will be recorded and is recorded and be posted on the webpage as usual. And then we'll get back to you about the likely next community meeting in roughly a month or so, I guess. All right. So continue to have a good day, good night, or good morning, depending where you are.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Thanks for participating, all of you. And welcome to Cloud.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night. See you next time.
All right.
Yeah, great. Bye-bye.
Bye now.